Hey guys! So today's video is how to do this kind of glamorous look and how to keep it on. It's more about longevity than it is about the look, but hopefully you guys get some tips and tricks from this, and if you have any questions, leave them down below, or if you have any extra tips, that's always great too. Alrighty, so the main thing that helps with longevity, at least for me, is to layer things. So I'm going to start with the eyes and kind of show you. If you want your eyeshadow to last, then you need to prime your eyes. You don't have to use a primer, you could use a concealer that you know works for you. I'm using the Milani Conceal and Perfect. And then I'm just patting it in and I'm bringing it pretty far out to cover veininess I have, because I am going out pretty far with the shadow. Next up, I always like to set my base. I know it's pretty popular now to not set it, and that does help with pigment, but I've found shadow is far less likely to crease if you set it first before putting anything on. So I'm using two palettes today. I'm using the Huda Beauty Nude palette and the Anastasia Soft Glam. Only using a couple shades for depth from this one. I'm mainly using this. So I'm going in with the shade Bare on a big flat brush. Just go in with a color that's a little lighter than your skin tone. And the reason I'm going in with a little bit lighter is because that will help shadows pop a bit more against your skin. While the cream is wet, I don't really like to buff. So I like to make sure it's all covered with shadow before I start very lightly rubbing the brush over, just to make sure I didn't miss any spots so that my eyeshadow isn't patchy. Because if you put shadow on one spot that's wet and one spot that's dry, it can look darker in the wet spot. Is when I'm going to start layering. So I'm going in with the shade Play, and this is a fluffy brush from BH Cosmetics. This is barely darker than my skin tone, and it is a little peachier. I'm pretty much using this to lay out the shape that I want for my eyeshadow. It's going to be pretty covered up towards the end, but it is very helpful when it comes to blending the other transition shades and just for like mapping out the shape. So I'm actually placing it, I like to place it on the side of the brush. I don't go in like this. I kind of get it on the side and the top. That's just how I prefer to lay it down. And without pressure, I'm very lightly buffing that through my socket, and I'm bringing it outward because I like a very elongated look. As you can see, it's adding like a super soft definition to my eye. Nothing crazy. Next up, I'm going in with the shade Tickle. This is a very rosy shade, and I'm using a Juno & Co brush. This is a fluffy brush, but it's a little more flat on the top. Again, I kind of just get it more, my brush is placed at an angle, at least the bristles are, so it's kind of getting on the side of the brush as well as the top instead of just the top. I find it a lot easier to blend shadows when I do it that way. And I'm going to look down just so I really get this in the socket. Again, I'm barely using any pressure. That's part of the reason I hold the brush so far back. You're a little looser this way and far less pressure. Okay, so now we're moving on to the Soft Glam palette. First, I'm taking the shade Mulberry on a very small shader brush. This is a very dense brush, so it really packs color on nicely. And for this, you just want to pat it in place. So I'm just patting on the outer corner, kind of the outer half of that lid. Now that that's placed, I'm going to blend it out with the shade Love Bite from the Huda palette, and this is a small crease brush from Morphe. It's the M506, and again, kind of taking it on the side of that brush and very, very lightly blending out the edge of that shade. Now with that same small shader brush, I'm going in with the black shade from the Anastasia palette, and I'm creating a little bit of a wing shape. So I'm pressing it against my lash line and angling it a bit outward. And again, with that previous brush, no added product, I'm blending out that edge. Now is where the layering kind of really does its job. I'm going in with the shade Charmed on my finger, and I'm pressing this on my lid. This is just going on the front part of my lid, and I'm kind of, as I bring it outward to this corner, I'm bringing it mainly right under the crease instead of towards the lash line, just to create more of that winged effect. And now we're going to go in with some glitter, and I'm using the glitter adhesive from Anastasia and the shade Star Power from Anastasia. I like to put a little bit of this on the back of my hand, just to get it a little tacky before I actually put the glitter on. No matter how good your glitter glue is, glitter tends to fall throughout the day. So that's why I like to layer. I'm going in with another shimmer right after this. That will really help with the layering. Okay, and now we're going in with another glitter. This is a pressed one from Huda. It's the shade Crave, and I'm just pressing that on top. So having the glitter sandwiched between two shadows really helps it last a lot longer, and it also adds way more dimension. I don't like to use glitter by itself anymore. I feel like it can look kind of like undone. But if you layer it, it definitely has all of the dimension that I'm looking for. Okay, so next up I'm going to tightline, and I'm using a Makeup Geek black eyeliner. Important if you're going to wear false lashes, because sometimes there's a little bit of space if you don't have super thick lashes. And I think even if you're not wearing lashes, you should tightline. If you're going to be taking pictures and stuff, it really makes your eyes pop and look a little more done. So now I'm going in with lashes, and I'm just using my Duo Lash Glue. A tip with this, glue sticks to glue really well, so if you're finding you have trouble with the corners, plop an extra dot on your actual, where you're going to glue the lash, and let that dry before you put the lash on that also has glue, and they'll like adhere together kind of like a magnet almost. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come back and do my brows. Alrighty, so I did do this brow, but I wanted to show you again how to make it last longer. I used a pencil. You can use whatever you want, but layering again is a common theme of this video. So on top of the pencil that I used, which is from Hourglass, I'm going to use an eyeshadow. I'm just using the shade Burnt Orange from Anastasia because my hair is a little more copper currently, but you just want to use something that is similar, and this is basically going to set what you did in place, and it can also make your brow look fuller using a powder, because it does without adding like a crazy amount of definition, it can add more shadow, making it look like you have more brow hairs than you do. And then on top of that, I don't have it over here, but on top of that, then you would go in with your clear brow gel or tinted brow gel to make it last forever and keep your hairs in place. So now I'm going to move on to my face. The most important part of face makeup is the skincare you do beforehand. I did an exfoliating mask and then I put a serum on that I know is good for the daytime and works well under my makeup, and a moisturizer. You could of course do toners, essences, all of that jazz. I'm just doing a little bit less skincare than I used to. I'm trying to figure out if I'm allergic to something. So from that, I know a lot of people aren't, or there are a lot of skeptics for primers. And I can understand that, especially if your skin is normal. You might not notice a difference, but I am combo. So without a primer, there are certain spots of my face that just look pretty poop by the end of the day. So I like to wear a primer only when I have an occasion or I know I'm going to be taking pictures, or I know I'm going to need it to last more than like 6 hours. I get a very oily T-zone. I find primer helps me to combat that a little bit. It also helps prevent my makeup from separating around my nose, which is common for people with oily skin, and it also helps to smooth if you have any texture. So the one I just used is from Ole Henriksen. It's the Banana Bright Face Primer. I just like this one because it helps lighten scars a little bit and it has some radiance to it, so I feel like it makes my skin look healthy without making it look greasy. So now we're moving on to the face. And I'm going to start with a corrector. This is from LA Girl. It's the Pro Conceal in Cool Pink Corrector. You're going to want to use a color that works with your skin tone. I'm very fair, which is why I need to use a cool pink. And this is to help cancel out the blue under my eyes. I also like to use it if I have a little bit of a shadow on my mustache or on any scarring. Typically, people would use like a green on redness or scars, but I found this works perfectly fine for me. My scars typically look a little purple or blue, so I find this actually works fine. This video is not about what corrector is best for you, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. You want to go in with a corrector if you don't have perfect skin, is so that you don't have to use as much foundation or concealer. So typically you're going to go in with all those products. Not everyone does, of course. I don't know why there's so much on this side. You don't have to if you don't want to, that's totally up to you, but if you are going to do all of those, then I find it's best to do thin layers. So basically, foundation, don't expect it to be full coverage. Even if it is full coverage, it's not meant to act like a concealer, most of them anyway. You want to use your concealer as a concealer and your foundation as a foundation. Foundation is just meant to kind of give you a blank canvas, and then concealer is for spot correcting, spot concealing, and like any under eye brightening you want to do, stuff like that. So you don't want to do like 7 layers of foundation to get a full coverage, because that's not what it's meant for, and that's why you're going to look cakey. So I'm using the Cover FX Power Play foundation and a crown brush. And I'm going to do a very thin layer of foundation. Skin doesn't really need more than a thin layer at this moment. And you also just don't want to ever do a thick layer of foundation. It's not going to look good in person. And in pictures, unless you did the same amount of foundation on your neck and chest or whatever skin is showing, you're going to look like you have a mask on. On camera, it might look like I'm putting a lot of foundation on, but I'm really not. And then buff in any areas I might need to, like my chin. If you have a lot of pores in a certain area, buffing is really helpful there, because it kind of helps fill it in. And that's another reason I think primers are good, because they create a barrier in your skin. If you're going to be taking pictures, I don't care if you think your foundation is the perfect match. Always bring a tiny bit down to any skin that might be showing, like your neck or your chest, because in photos, it's probably going to look really different. Like right now, or before I started doing this foundation looked identical to my neck. But on camera, I'm sure you would have told me in the comments, it looks like it didn't match because I have a very green undertone in my neck. And I do have a little bit of flashback currently from the primer on my face. And you always want to get your ears because depending on how fair you are, it's probably going to look super red. So now it's time for concealer. I'm using the same one I used to prime my lids, the Milani Conceal and Perfect. And I'm not doing a lot. I'm doing like little dots here and there. My nose gets super red, so I definitely want extra coverage there. And I like to do a straight line across. It just helps shape my nose because I'm not a fan of the shape. My chin is where I need the most coverage, so I do put a little more there. And then I'm going to put a little bit on the side. Okay, and I'm using my foundation brush to buff most of that out. So I'm just patting it to blend. And I like to hold the actual brush to kind of pinch it. I'm going to let the concealer that's right in the inner corner sit for a little bit and let it get a little thicker. As you let concealer set, it does get a little more tacky and more difficult to blend, but that's good because it almost has more coverage when you do it that way. Okay, so all my concealer is on. I do feel fully concealed in all the places that I want to. Once I set everything, I'm going to zoom in so you can see how it looks more natural than probably. I feel like people think longevity means lots of makeup and cakey face, but it doesn't. It kind of means less. So, like right now, I wouldn't be embarrassed if someone was right in my face looking at me because yeah, I'm wearing makeup, but they wouldn't be like, wow, that's an inch thick. So anyway, moving on to cream contour. I like to do this almost kind of as opposed to powder. It just looks a little more natural. So for the cheekbone, my cheekbone is right here. Hopefully you can tell. It's not very strong, but it is very high up. I like to kind of go right on top of it, like right above that shadow, because we're trying to lift the cheeks. If you put it right inside that shadow, it's going to make your cheekbones almost drag down. And I like to do a straight line under my nose just because I don't like the shape. And I wish it looked more like this. And a little bit on the sides. And a little on my chin and temples. Cream looks more natural, but if you like something super defined, cream is a great base for a powder contour. It also gives way more depth to the face. So, taking my foundation brush again, and for the cheeks, I'm kind of pushing it upwards to blend. Okay, so now it is time for powder. The powder I'm using is from Fenty Beauty. It is the shade Butter. I like this one because there's not really any flashback, and it makes my skin look super airbrushed. And I'm just going in with a setting brush from e.l.f. And with powder, I like to press and roll. So I'm going to start on my under eye. Okay, so if you're oily, then I would leave powder in certain areas a little bit longer. So I'm going to take a little bit more powder on that brush, and I get very oily on the sides of my nostrils, so I'm just going to pack it there and let it sit while I do the under eye. So first I'm going to take that first brush we used, the big fluffy brush, and blend out the edge of what's already there because it did get a little harsh as we applied concealer, which is expected. Okay, so now we're doing the lower lash line. First, I'm going in with the shade Tickle on the same brush I used before for that shade. I like to do a pretty heavy lower lash line. You don't even have to do it if you don't want to. I find a little something though is good if you're going to be taking pictures, just so your eyes don't get lost or don't feel super heavy. Okay, now I'm going in with that very small crease brush, and I'm going in with the shade Spanked, closer to my left. So now I'm going to bronze my face. I'm using the Makeup Revolution bronzer. This is in the shade 01 Cool. I like to first take a fluffy blending brush and just kind of tie in the eye look to the side of my face. So I basically bring it out and blend it with the bronzer. I just find it super flattering and it looks a little more seamless. And now I'm going in with a tapered fluffy brush, putting it on the side and just going at it with the bronzer. You don't have to bronze if you don't want to. You could also contour first if you'd like. I don't find it necessary to contour again after, you know, using the stick, but to each their own. This bronzer is actually really good for a drugstore bronzer, like it lasts a pretty long time. Okay, and something that I think is super important and tends to wear off is blush. And I know Tarte blushes last a pretty long time, so I'm using my Party blush from Tarte. This was a birthday gift last year, I think. And I'm just using an angled blush brush. Now here, you can go in with a highlight if you'd like. I don't like a super intense highlight, so I'm not going to layer it, but to make it last longer, you would want to go in with a cream first. I'm just going in with my my Ofra Illuminating Blush Stripes and a Morphe highlighting brush. I'm just going to go in with that pink shade. And I like it to be mainly on my cheek. Alrighty, so the last two steps for the eyes is eyeliner. So I'm going in with a nude from Makeup Geek in my waterline. Now you can use any color you want. I just find this the most flattering for the look I have on right now. But if you find liner in your waterline doesn't really stay, aside from investing in a good one, I really like the Makeup Geek ones and the Marc Jacob ones. I love to set it with a powder that is similar in color. So especially black. Black in pictures, I don't like when it's shiny, so I always set that no matter what. You don't have to, but that's something I find really makes a difference. And it lasts so much longer, so like you might as well. And then I'm just going in with mascara. I'm not setting it today because I'm probably taking my makeup off right after this. I haven't found a mascara that I'm like really wowed by aside from the Velvet Noir from Marc Jacobs. But I don't have that right now, so I'm just using like a Buxom mascara, and it's fine, but it's not like... So as you can see with mascara on the bottom, it does balance out the eyes a lot more, especially because I have a lot of lashes on the bottom, so it adds a lot of depth to the look that was kind of missing on the bottom. So the final step is actually lips, and I'm going in with a lip liner first. This is again with the layering. It just lasts longer. I'm going to do a lip liner You can go in with a liquid lip on top if you want and then a regular lipstick. That's up to you, but I'm just going to use a lip liner, then a regular lipstick, and maybe a translucent powder. Tap on the OG Lolita. Okay, and the lipstick I'm using is Kiss from Anastasia Beverly Hills. I have 2 of these in case you're like, you don't like that lipstick, you've never used it. This is my other one. Now I'm just going to do some like final tweaks. I'm going in with the Call Me Unshakable liquid eyeliner. I mentioned this in the Shane Dawson video, but I'm a really big fan of this. I really like to put a liquid liner on top of the lash band, even if I'm not wearing liner, because it helps hide the glue. Always make sure that your glue is dry before you use the liner though, because then you'll ruin your eyeliner. Okay, so that's it for the look. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something, and I hope you have an amazing day.